This experience is best viewed using a virtual reality headset.
Hello and welcome to Liverpool. Now I've got something a little bit different for you today. This is Charlie, she's a local tour guide and she's going to be taking us round the Albert Docks. Shall we get cracking?
We will.
Let's go.
If you look all around you, you can see the history of the dock, basically. So here, on our right, this gives you an idea of what this building was, because the name gives you that clue. Because when the Albert Dock opened in 1846, it was the first of its kind in many ways. Because first of all, it was the world's first non-combustible dock, which basically meant it couldn't go on fire. And then a couple of years later, and this is something that Jesse Hartley, the civil engineer, wanted to introduce, was hydraulic cranes. This made bringing the cargo in so much easier. And this was the hydraulic centre. So this is where all the hydros, this is where all the engines were. So as you can tell by the layout of the building, and there you have the very large chimney up here. And of course this was here, so this was the hydro centre. And of course when the Albert Dock was redeveloped in the 80s, it was still standing. And to this day now, in modern day, this is a very, very popular public house. But it was renamed the Pump House because that was literally what it was intended for. It was the hydraulic centre. So there you have our pump house here. And here on the left, you had what we called the traffic office. Now this was actually built after the Albert Dock was built. And the traffic office, this was built by a gentleman, an architect called Philip Hardwick. So this wasn't introduced until around 1848. So this was where all the administration came by when it came to the Albert Dock. And it's slightly different in architecture. You've got the lovely portico at the front. This, in later life in the 80s, became the Granada Studios. We have Granada Studios here in Liverpool. We still do. They're just a little bit further down in the pier head. And now this is part of the Maritime Museum. This is the Martin Luther King building, and it's going to be part of our International Slavery Museum that we have here in the Albert Dock. We've got lots of clues scattered around the Albert Dock to this day, showing you the past history of the dock and what it stood for to the city.
Impressive architecture, isn't it?
It's stunning. It's absolutely stunning. And it stood the test of time as well, because we're now 2021. This was built 1846, 1847, and it's still here. And when it was redeveloped in the 80s, it was still stood strong. It just needed to be, they just had to come in and redevelop it slightly when it was made into a tourist attraction. And it's because of Jesse Hartley, the civil engineer. He built it with brick and cast iron, and he did that on purpose because obviously he wanted to be non-combustible, and that's the way in which he did it. He studied ways in which it could not go on fire. He went over to the other docks.
It's always handy, isn't it?
Yeah. Basically, we've got 7 miles of docklands here in Liverpool, and he went over down into the Brunswick area, and they studied, make sure that it didn't go on fire, and that's how they before they built this Albert Dock. So the Albert Dock stood out the rest. It's actually based on St Catherine's down in London. So if anyone's ever been down to London, that when they look at the infrastructure of this Albert Dock, they will recognise it from St Catherine's as well. I mean, there's 5 different sections. You've got the Adoradian Pavilion and so on and so on. And they've got 5 floors. You've got the cellars, you've got the ceilings, and they're built to withstand cargo. So there's vast amounts of space for the deliveries that came in. And of course, it was a bonded warehouse as well. So a lot of the stuff that was stored was cotton, tea, hemp, tobacco, rum. It was like a village, because what he wanted to create was a village type feel, but also so it was safe as well. So the people, all the cargo that was coming in was safe. There was a 6-foot perimeter wall around this dock. Some of the wall to this day is still on the other side. But I mean, look, as you can see here as we're walking along, can you see these tram tracks
I've never
here.
noticed them
Yeah,
before.
this is where the cargo was stopped, and
I'm not very observant, so it's not something I picked up the last time I was here.
here you go. So this just gives you an example. Now this is our Mersey Maritime Museum. We're very lucky. When I was a kid, I got brought here, but this is 5 floors of the history of our maritime history here in Liverpool. It's just stunning, the Maritime Museum. But this just gives you a classic example of the buildings. So that's where the silo came down. It's just absolutely stunning. And look at that architecture.
Yeah,
and
it's
gives
really
you the
interesting. I like the contrast with the blacks.
Yeah, and you've got the 5 floors, and you can see the vast amount of space in each of the floors as well, so that there was so much space for cargo as well.
So this was all storage then?
Yeah, and you can see these doors here. This is where things were backed up for cargo to go in. It's just, now this was used in the early 20th century as well for fish storage as well. So
was it chilled?
Yes, yeah. So the Albert Dock's gone through many
iterations.
Yeah, literally. I mean, it was opened in 1846 by Prince Albert, Prince Consort, Queen Victoria's husband, hence the name, the Albert Dock, which, can I just say, it's now the Royal Albert Dock. It's been given heritage status.
I apologise, I introduced it incorrectly.
Because Prince Charles was here around 2 years ago. Prince Charles is always in Liverpool. Can I just say, he absolutely loves Liverpool. He has 2 favourite buildings. I believe it's this and the St George's Hall as well. He loves the architecture, and we all know what he loves about, with his architecture. And can you blame him for this?
No,
it's just
cool.
Absolutely stunning. So Prince Consort came. He came in. Actually, we are walking towards where the Prince Albert sailed in on the HMS Fairy. Believe it or not, he sailed in. So he came through this bridge here, which is called Hartley's Bridge, named after Jesse Hartley. And as we come towards the bridge, you'll see what I class as, it's just a stunning view of the quayside of the Albert Dock. And I'll just give you the vast amount of space. So when Albert Docks opened, it was the #1 place to bring cargo. And I mentioned before what was stored here. But unfortunately, very quickly, the ships and the cargo got bigger and bigger.
Yeah, naturally.
So naturally, the ships couldn't fit through this bridge. So they had to go elsewhere in the city. I mean, we had 7 miles. There you go. Here we go. This is the pan of the Albert Dock. I love actually walking when I bring groups, and I love this because it just gives you.
It is nice. I'll just walk
it's
over here.
Lovely. Now look for the clues that everything that's still here. Look at this. You've got the gas lamps. You've got all the little buoys here. So this is the original Hartley's Bridge. You've got the little watchmen's huts on the bridges. And something else I'm going to talk to you about in a minute. We've got the Piermaster's house. And the Piermaster
Is that this one here?
is one of many thousands of people who actually used to work on the dock. There's thousands of people that worked here. It was like a village. But the Piermaster had a really, really important job, because every time a ship came in with cargo, he had to come out and check what was on that ship. So
that's this building here, then to the right. Yeah.
If we make our way along to it, just so. So he literally had to live on site. So every time a ship came in, it would be his job to come out, check the cargo, and the goods before it could proceed into the dock. So he lived on site. Now this house has been redeveloped. It was actually one of the houses that actually was still standing when the dock was redeveloped in the 80s, and it gives you an idea of what it's like to live on the dock. You can imagine it was very cold when you go in.
Yeah.
When you go in, first thing you'll notice is there's a fire in every room.
Yeah,
It must have been very, very cold. But this is excellent for school children to relive what it was like.
Can you go inside normally, can't you?
You can, yeah. It's actually owned by National Museums Liverpool. They're excellent with their education and teaching children, what it was like, especially during the war for them. So you would have houses like this generally by every bridge point because that's where the pier-masters were. This is where you'll find them.
Lovely house, isn't it?
It is. And as I say, inside, it's like stepping back in time. Yeah. It really is. So we are actually on a historic path here because, as I mentioned, so the ships would come in off the Mersey through this gate here. This is actually Canning Dock, so this is one of the many docks. And then come through here and over Hartley's Bridge and in to the Albert Dock. I also love, can I just point out to you, it's nothing to do with the, I love the way just one of our cathedrals is peeping through.
Visible through the middle, yeah.
Peeping through in the distance. That's our Anglican cathedral. Liverpool, typical, we have two. But it took over 70 years to build the Anglican cathedral. It's beautiful. It's the largest Anglican cathedral in the world.
Yeah, it is beautiful.
Finished in 1977. It's just absolutely stunning, but I just love the way that it peeps through. So with the Albert Dock, I mentioned from it opened 1846 up until 1860, the #1 dock in Liverpool. So much was happening in this dock. Then cargo ships coming bigger and bigger and bigger, so they were going off into other docks. Albert Dock very, very quickly started to decline because of what was happening. So it got used for other ways, and then more decline happened, and then the next time it was really useful for purpose for the city was during the Second World War. It was stored for ammunition and also for the tugboats during Battle of the Atlantic. And then after that, apart from storage for refrigeration, that was it. It was left to decline in the 50s and the 60s, and then it was closed down. During the 50s, it was given its heritage status. This is the largest block of Grade 1 listed buildings. So it got that.
In the UK?
Yeah.
Oh.
So this is Grade 1 listed. So in many ways that meant it couldn't be touched. So it had that status.
Yeah, it was always going to lock in its history, wasn't it?
Such recognition for Jesse Hartley because he worked so hard. They are absolutely stunning, beautiful buildings.
How long did it take them to build?
Well, I think it was from around 1842 and then it was opened in 1846. So it took him that long. So then we had the decline in Liverpool. We had a lot going on with mass unemployment. The government sent a gentleman to come and sort us out, basically. And I say that with the greatest of respect. And he just so happened to like the city, which was good for us. And his name was Michael Heseltine. And just to bring you right up to date, he's actually Freedom of the City. He's got Freedom of the City of Liverpool now, and he's never left us, really. He came over from the Tory government. He looked at Liverpool and he was just like, right, you've lost all your shipping, you've lost all your jobs, but tourism, there's an aspect of tourism. And the two big things that happened for Liverpool in the very early 80s, and the first was the Garden Festival that opened in the south of Liverpool, where we had reclaimed land that was opened. The Queen came in 1984, there were 60 themed gardens. I always remember because of the Blue Peter garden, because my themed garden wasn't chosen. I never got my Blue Peter badge. I was absolutely devastated. But went as a kid. The Yellow Submarine garden was there. We did all that. The second was they redeveloped this. The Arrowcroft Company were brought up from London, private organisation, and the Albert Dock was started to be redeveloped. And the first part of the dock they opened it up in stages, really, and the first part of it to be redeveloped and opened to start to get people back down to the river was the Maritime Museum. And then Prince Charles came in 1988 and opened up that first section, and then it was opened up in stages. And then the second thing to be opened was the Tate. So we're just outside here now, the Tate.
That's why we were waiting here.
So we've got the Tate. Now, the link with the Tate is Henry Tate, okay? So Henry Tate set up the sugar factories in Liverpool. Well, Henry Tate was also the main benefactor of the Tate Modern down in London in the 1800s.
I did wonder if it was connected.
This was the first Tate outside London. and we're very, very proud of that. I mean, there's many now outside, around the country, but this was the first, and it was opened in 1988. It now attracts around 700,000 visitors a year alone.
Yeah, that's impressive, isn't it?
So when they opened it, they had no idea. It was basically chosen for the gallery space, for the wide the ceilings, the wide floors. Obviously, because it's a warehouse, it's perfect for gallery space. They're proud because, and we are proud as a city, because they were the first to have the Turner Art Prize here, and that was the first time it was outside London. We had that for when we were Capital of Culture in 2008. They've had so many of the big names in art and in modern art. So Peter Blake, you've had Tracy Enim, you've had all those people. It's just absolutely fantastic, the Tate. We're very proud as a city to have the Tate here. But that's the link with Henry Tate. So we're really, really proud.
Is it open at the moment, or is it?
Yes, they're back open.
Brilliant.
Yeah, they're back open. They've got the Don McLennan exhibition on at the moment, which is absolutely fantastic as well. And it brings so many people. When you think about it, the Albert Dock attracts 7 million visitors a year. 7 million tourists come to see us a year. 700,000 people alone come to the Tate. But as a city, we love our art. We have our modern art here at the Tate, but over at the William Brown Street, we have the Walker Art Gallery, which has all the classical art as well. So we've just got this plethora of history. Now, if we keep walking along, if you keep walking, you'll notice tiny little reflections of the past in the dock as we keep walking along. You've got all these cast iron blocks. Okay, so I mentioned before about the beauty of this dock is looking up. Look up at not only the pigeons and the seagulls, but also all the reflections of the past that you can still see, like the pulleys and the joints that used to bring the cargo off the ships, and the hydraulics as well. And as we're walking along, you'll see this as we're going past. So look out for it yourself, because you will see it for yourself. So I'll give you a clue. So you've got these, and you've got all these configurations as well, and these all helped bring the cargo off the ships. And this has all been kept to show you just how busy the flow of cargo that used to come off the ships. And it's just lovely as well, because we've got all the ships. I mean, obviously they're yachts now. I mean, it's a completely different ball game now on the Albert Dock. I mean, you can just see some of the ships that are on yachts that are on the dock now, but you can imagine the hustle and the bustle that happened here.
Yeah.
Now, just a little ditty for you: if you've got a spare £750,000, basically, you can live here. So, if we keep walking along, come with me. The way in which we're walking around, Albert Dock is a thriving tourist attraction now. 7 million visitors a year, home to 3 of the biggest tourist attractions in Liverpool, the Tate, Maritime Museum, and of course the Beatles story, home to, it's like a walk-through experience of the Beatles. That attracts nearly 410,000 people a year. Usually, pre-COVID, you have all these events every 2 weeks. You have the pirate festivals, you have the folk festivals, so many different festivals taking place every 2 weeks. They usually have a pontoon where we have films, football, so much taking place on the dock. It's a hive of activity usually, and hopefully we will get back to those days as well. So you'll notice all the restaurants. I mean, what's cooking here? They've been with us since the dock opened in the 80s. But some of you might recognise this little corner, because I'm going to get you to turn the camera around for this view, because some of you might recognise a TV show back in the 80s that's still on to this day, with Richard and Judy when they first started, and the view on the settee was the Livertours.
Was the studio up there?
Their studio was behind us. This is where the This Morning studios were. And this is where Richard and Judy used to say good morning every morning behind us from the city, and that was the view. And that was another thing. When Albert Dock was redeveloped in the 80s, it put Liverpool on the map, and we had the weather map as well. I won't go into much detail about the weather map as well, for obvious reasons, but we had the weather map here, and it was fantastic because we had the TV studios down here as well. And of course, Rich and Judy, so many famous people came and visited the studios as well.
So this wasn't the studio?
Yes, it's here.
I thought you said this had been here since it had opened.
No, but that was over at the other side.
It was in a different place.
Yeah,
okay,
it was in a different side. So many people in the 80s will have remember Rich and Judy.
Yeah, I can't picture that. I watched Richard and Judy, I can't remember that backdrop though.
You're too young.
Yeah.
Just don't rub it in. Okay, so I wanted to show you this bit, if you want to come in a little bit more. And I wanted to show you these little red sheds, because one of my favourite parts of doing tours for children is asking them what they think those red sheds are, because I always mention about Jesse Hartley and his love of vast amounts of space. So there's so much space for storage, and this is what he's well known for. And then I show them that, and they think, oh, it's like an extra shed on the outside and everything. And then I tell them what it is, and they'll go, ooh, miss. And I tell them they are toilets, and this is what Jesse did. He put the toilets on the outside, and this is what he did it for. And there's a couple of these still scattered. I mean, obviously it's not a toilet now. I have no idea what they are now, but that's what they were back in those days. And so
good for ventilation.
Well, it's great for ventilation. And as you can see the ventilation there.
Yeah.
But also, before we move on, I wanted to show you these little red funnels. And I mentioned to you before about the garden festival that opened in 1984 up in the south of Liverpool, in the south of the city. Now, there is a smaller version of it open now. Obviously not the vast amount of space, because a lot of the land has been built on for housing, St Michael's. A lot of the infrastructure was moved, including these. Now these, you might, if any of you ever visited the garden festival here in Liverpool back in the 80s, you might recognise these. There's some of them along the riverfront as well in the south, but these are from the original garden festival in 1984, these red funnels. For me, they often remind me of Beatles in Yellow Submarine. Don't ask me why, but this is what
it looks like. The what's it called?
But that's just me, because I'm a Beatles guide as well, so I'm quite with the Beatles. So, but that's what they remind me of. But I often get that off the kids as well. It reminds them of Yellow Submarine. So I just wanted to point these out to you. As we're going around, also you've got another one of the pulleys here behind the lamps. Because behind me we have the Adoradian Pavilion. This is private property. This is private offices. A lot of private offices in the estate now. Such a lovely place to work as well. So as we move on, okay. So I'm going to finish here. So this is one of the entrances to the Albert Dock, and I'm going to start over here because I did mention about the tourist attractions that are here at the Albert Dock. So you've got the Beatles story. Now you see it says they're celebrating 30 years. It's actually 31 years. They're taking it over because of COVID. Opened in 1990, 3rd of May 1990, and it's been going ever since. Now, back in 1990, the Beatles weren't as popular as they were now to this day. This is where I started my career in tourism, to be perfectly honest. I was there for 22 years, and I've only just left to set up my business, but this gave me my Green Badge guide, this gave me my Beatles guide, and also my masters in the Beatles as well. So I think you could...
You've got a masters in the Beatles?
Yeah, I've got a masters in the Beatles. So I think it's fair to say, so I generated my career there. So still going, they will be celebrating this year. Any excuse to have a party, the Beatles story, they will be celebrating this year. So that is the third.
That's just Liverpudlians in general, isn't it?
We like to party. Don't be having a go at us. We like to party. So that's our beetle story. Then, again, and I've been saying this all the way around, spot the clues to the thing. So we've got the pulleys, we've got the ejectors for the cargo, all here, all scattered around, all here. Also, I also want to note the reinforced brickwork on the sides. Now that, especially with the lime bricks, that was put in place when cargo was being lifted and it was banging against the walls, the brick walls. That was there to reinforce the walls as well. So that's what that's what a lot of those bricks are there for.
It adds to the architecture though, doesn't it? I like it.
But also it helps with the infrastructure as well, so it didn't fall down. And also, I've been telling you all along about Prince Albert, Prince Consort, Queen Victoria's husband, because also Queen Victoria came to Liverpool. It was actually when Prince Albert came to Liverpool, it was the first time that a royal had ever been to Liverpool. So there was a lot of pomp and ceremony, thousands of people lined the river, because obviously he came in through a yacht. I mentioned HMS Fairy, I mentioned this just before. He came in through the quayside and he had a banquet here in the Albert Dock as well, and thousands of people came and greeted him. So for Liverpool, it was quite a day for the city. Not only did he visit the Albert Dock, he actually visited our customs house. Unfortunately, the customs house is no longer with us. It was knocked down after the Second World War. It's another beautiful building that I regret we don't have anymore. But what a day for the city! What a day! When Prince Albert came and opened this fabulous. And behind me, we have proof of him coming, because we have the plaque, and it was the 30th of July, 1846 that he opened. And there you go. Okay, and then as I mentioned, Prince Charles came again and gave us our royal status, the Royal Albert Dock. And this is it, this is my fabulous dock. I'm always here, you always find me in the Albert Dock. I work for the Albert Dock Foundation as well, and this is my second home. And I hope you've enjoyed just some of the snippets that I've told you today about this fabulous, fabulous place and the infrastructure.
So there we have it. I think I'm going to end this here. I really hope you enjoyed that. Huge thank you to Charlie for showing us around. See you next time.